Hello, everyone. Welcome to Make It Alexandria on ZTV Live. I am your host, Alyssa Kovach. I own Alexandria Makers Market, and it is my honor and privilege to get to work with really amazing makers and creators right here in this city. And we had a little bit of a schedule change. Just wanted to mention Jacqueline of Clover and Maple. We are hoping to see her in a future episode. But tonight, we graciously have Warren, who is going to join us next week. He is here representing Del Rey Metalworks, which is his company, and I'm so thankful to have you here. Thank you, Warren, for joining, especially with not much notice. I'm so glad to have you here.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Alyssa.
We actually go back. He was at the very first Makers Market event that I had back in 2019. And so we do have a history together. And I've just really seen Del Rey Metalworks kind of grow over the time, even despite COVID. And so, Warren, for somebody who maybe does not know as much about you, would you just tell us a little bit about how you started doing what you do?
Sure, I'd be happy to. About 3 years ago, actually, it was early 2019. I had a friend coming into town. I live here in the city of Alexandria. I had a friend coming into town for a long weekend. We were trying to figure out what we could do. So after watching, many episodes of Forged in Fire, I thought it'd be really cool and interesting if we could do some kind of a blacksmithing class. I found through the Virginia Institute of Blacksmith down near Charlottesville, they had weekend classes. So he and I went down there. We took a Saturday and Sunday class and learned how to make a hatchet. I didn't do very well, and I wanted to try to do better. So I came back and I looked around on the internet, and I found that in Arlington, there's a forge. It's a Blacksmith Guild of the Potomac in Arlington on Military Drive or Avenue, and they have it's essentially a teaching organization. It's through one of their forest areas or something, and it's pretty inexpensive to join. I went in there and I took a beginner class, which was about 6 weeks long. We learned different techniques. We made different things like flowers and hooks and a fire poker, and I made a knife and all that. So, and it was on coal burning forge. I learned on the coal burning forge down at the Virginia Institute of Blacksmith as well. So I did that. I was doing that, and that that was really cool and interesting, and I really enjoyed doing that. And I wanted to find something else to do to supplement that. So I had always wanted to learn how to weld. Back when I was in grade school and shop, we had done some welding, but I always wanted to learn to weld, and found that the Art League in Alexandria, which is affiliated with the Torpedo Factory, they give furniture making and essentially welding classes. There's two different classes, but they both essentially give you the techniques and the experience in learning how to weld using acetylene welders. So I took 2 sessions of that class and learned how to weld, and then after that, I was doing some blacksmithing and some really rudimentary welding, at home. And my buddy came to town, the one who went blacksmithing with me, and we participated in Art on the Avenue in 2019. And I showed off a lot of blacksmith items, hooks, and made some horseshoe door knockers and some railroad spike bottle openers and various things. And then, in the course of getting my city license so I could pay my sales tax and all that, I found that I needed to find a place where I could do this work without fear of a zoning issue. And so Alyssa actually referred me to the Garden on Eisenhower Avenue, and I joined the Garden. I've been a member of them since late 2019 or early 2020, I believe. And they've got a full welding setup and metalworking area and woodworking shop and laser printer and all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing a lot of work there. Well, and then COVID hit, and I had a lot of time on my hands. and I went there and I really got into welding. Taught myself how to TIG weld here at home, and which is a type of welding with electricity. And then I learned MIG welding, which is wire welding. And I learned wire welding at the garden. They showed me how to do that. I got signed off on it. And with TIG and MIG, I made a really big radiator cover that we have in our living room. And to go back at the art league, my first project at the art league that I made there was a radiator cover for my office here. Wow. And that's made primarily out of 1-inch tubes with some 1-inch square tubes with a 1/2-inch square bar and all that. Is very ornamental. And I believe you've got some pictures of that. Wow. But this is the picture of the radiator cover that I made at the garden. It's pretty long, and it covers the radiator behind it, and it's got a poplar top on it that my wife actually made. So it was a project we made together. Put that together, and then from there I was like, okay, well, hopefully I could. This is the other radiator cover. This is actually the face of it, which I guess, and there's a top that I have on it, but I guess something like this could be used as like a fireplace cover as well. It'd be easy enough to put something together like that. But then at the garden, I was like, well, what else can I make? Because I've got I want to, part of being part of the Avenue and then being part of the Alexandria Makers Market at Port City was, we went virtual, and there was a virtual Makers Market. So I joined Etsy, or I put a shop up on Etsy, and I wanted to be able to put some things on Etsy that I could sell. So I started making metal roses. So I've got these metal roses made of steel, and they're colorized. It's steel dye. I've got them in red, and actually the ones I have now are all in red, but I can make them in different. But I also made tulips recently. Oh, and that's a picture of copper roses. I also made copper roses, so those are all copper. The steel roses, I have to heat the petals and leaves in order to form them, but the copper is more malleable, so I'm able to just bend those by hand. I also made tulips, and I made a bunch of those for this past Mother's Day. I was at a local flea market here in Delray and offered those for sale. So I started making those, and then, because of that, I'm also on Instagram, and I've gotten some custom orders through Instagram. For example, I made this steel chimenea, which is a modern chimenea, which is an outdoor fireplace. That was a custom order from a gentleman here locally that wanted this, because the only place he could find them for sale was in New Zealand, and he was not going to pay shipping for that here. So he contacted me through Instagram. We worked out the design, and I made it to him, and he picked it up a couple weeks ago, and he's really happy with it. So I make items for sale, like I said, the roses and that, but I do a lot of custom work, and I enjoy the custom work because it's kind of challenging for me. I made a sunflower. I'm working with a gentleman now locally who wants me to make a gate for his backyard. It's a low gate, approximately 22 inches high, 40 inches wide. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I've really been thankful for the opportunity to work at the garden, thegarden.net. And, they've been really supportive of my work there. And it gives me, the opportunity to use a lot of the tools which are handy to have, rather than try to work around something that's easily done at the garden.
Well, I think it's just such an incredible range what you have done. And I think about your setup at our first event together, and it was the smaller items. It really cool railroad spikes that were bottle openers, which were super cool, and door knockers and hooks. And then this progression of these really beautiful and delicate flowers. And then this huge chimenea and some larger pieces as well. And so, I am just trying to wrap my head around, what does something like this take in terms of your time? For example, how long would it take to complete a rose from start to finish? And then how long I gotta ask, did that chimenea take?
Well, there's a lot of time spent hand cutting the petals. I've got patterns, so I use the sheet metal. Let me draw out the patterns on it, cut them out by hand. I'm trying to figure out a way to CNC out the petals and a CNC router machine, but
Mm-hmm.
I have not
Mm-hmm.
gotten to that point yet. So right now it's all cutting it out by hand. So, that's, a little bit of time cutting those out. But then once those are cut out, it's a matter of, and I do them all in bunch, so I can't tell you specifically how long one would
Sure.
take. But
Sure.
once I've got the petals cut out, it's a matter of drilling the holes in the petals, and then I weld them on the stem, and I weld the leaves on the stem, and then I shape the petals.
Mm-hmm.
So shaping one rose probably takes half an hour or more,
Wow.
especially like the larger roses, because like like even on this copper one, there's probably 5 layers of petals in there. Um, and then the leaves you can't really tell, but I hammer the leaves so that gives them pattern of the striations on the leaves, and I actually hammer the petals, so you can see like it looks veiny on the outside of the petals of the rose when you look at it. So there, like I said, I usually do them in groups. I usually do everything in 2 or more,
Mm-hmm.
just especially if it's something I don't want to say like custom, because obviously I didn't do 2 of the chimeneas at the same time. But the chimenea took probably like how like calendar wise, it probably took me a month and a half to do it. But that
Wow.
was a couple evenings a week, and maybe 4 to 6 hour stint on a weekend. But I got hung up because I cut out all the sides were plasma cut by hand, and the plasma cutter broke. So there was
Oh,
probably 2 or 3 weeks where I had to make like 2 more cuts before I could start assembling, and I had to wait for the plasma cutter to come back online. So once I had that done, really probably end to end, the that chimney is probably 24 to 30 hours,
wow.
with cutting. If I had a computerized plasma cutter, which the garden is getting here soon, a lot of time and could be taken off on cutting as well as the cleanup, because then
Sure.
everything would be uniform. Cutting by hand, there's some variance there that I had to then lay the pieces on top of each other and make sure they were all uniform before I could put them together. So the welding went pretty quickly, was a couple hours, half a day of welding, and then the grinding to clean up the welds, just making it look good, was a couple hours. And then that chimenea, just so you know, it looks rusty. It patinas. It's a special type of metal
Mm-hmm.
uh, where it patinas, which means it gets rusty looking, but it doesn't actually rust. It doesn't corrode. It it essentially it's made to do this, so it protects itself for the elements. You don't paint this. You don't do anything to it, especially when you're dealing like with the heat. If we were to paint this, we'd have to put a high temperature paint on it, and then you'd have to worry about the elements and all that if the paint chips. But with this steel, it's called Core 10. It just you let it stay out in the elements, and it gets more uniform. Here you can see it's kind of streaky from when I put the spray bottle of the accelerant on there, but it comes out really uniform. Um, and then like I said, I made you showed a picture of the wine rack. I made those in pairs. I made 2 of those, and those were relatively quickly, maybe a couple hours. Um, well, I bent like one session where I bent all the squares, and it's a horizontal. They're 9 bottle racks. I make these custom orders now on Etsy, and then welding took, you know, half an hour to an hour and a half for both of them. Trying to keeping them uniform and that, measuring out the space and all that. Here are some mirrors that I had seen on Etsy, some industrial mirrors, and I got I say this is, I do a lot of reclaimed work. So this is the mirror itself was I got off of next door. There was a person who was getting rid of their old bathroom mirror. So I brought it home and I cut it to fit the frames that I had welded up at the garden. And I still have those for sale. And then
And did you ever expect, I mean, from just sitting down to watching Forged in Fire or Forged with Fire and to where you are now and using plasma cutters and some of these really, really significant statement items that you have made, was that ever the trajectory that you anticipated?
no. As I mentioned, I always wanted to, well, that's something that I figured it'd be nice to have that because I'm kind of handy. I like fixing stuff and, rather than going out and paying a lot of money for like a simple weld, for example, my lawnmower, the back axle broke. So I was able to weld it, fix it rather than having to take it to someone. I always wanted to weld, but, kind of fell into blacksmithing. I'm not a knife maker. I call myself a rustic blacksmith and welder. And really just fell into it. Again, I wanted to bring my buddy to town. He's a professor up at Slippery Rock University, and he does chainsaw carving. And I brought him down for Art on the Avenue. They let us share a booth that first year, and it worked out. And then I had to make stock inventory in order to go to Art on the Avenue, and then I had inventory left over. So in order to keep selling it, I went to the Maker's Market at Port City, and then I got on Etsy, and it's kind of perpetuated itself. And people are contacting me with special requests, and I essentially am taking all work if I can, if it makes sense. If I can't do it, I'll tell you. But so I've had for example, I was contacted at the Delray flea market by a woman who got a folding bike, and she needed a pin mechanism to keep her folding bike secure, and I fabricated that for her. And I didn't make any money on it, but it makes me think, and if it fills someone's need without me losing money on it, I'm happy to give it a shot.
I think that's an incredibly I don't know that I would ever have thought to approach you for something so practical. And so I'm kind of glad that meeting happened just, out of the blue.
Yeah.
And that is just another one of the reasons why, first of all, I just love how small town we can really kind of seem at times here in this larger city. And at the same time, like that connection, that little neighborly moment was just probably something, really meaningful for her who just needed this item, but seems pretty specialized. So that's cool that you were able to make that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really, it's like, to go back to your question again, I never thought at this point that I would have made those radiator covers, or to have made that chimenea. And, those are the kinds of things I'd like to make because obviously it's, there's more dollars in it. But doing the other projects, they're fun. I don't mind doing it. I'm working with someone here local on a special project that, I'm making pennies per part for like 100 pieces of something. So, there's a lot I can do. And again, I'm grateful for the garden because, they've given me the opportunity to use a lot of their tools and stuff. I did also want to say that I'm really very thankful to be here in the Delray community because it turns out we're really tight knit, between you and Amy, if I could say her name. And then just going to some of these local markets and stuff and seeing these people that we're all follow each other on Instagram, and it's really just kind of exciting, kind of refer people to each other. And I had never really envisioned that kind of community either.
I absolutely agree. That is the biggest blessing out of all of this is getting to know you guys. And I will second exactly what you just said, that there is a little bit of a inherent community that comes with participating in some of these events, but it's just such a special little part. And this city, and especially in Delray, is just a very creative section. So
Sure.
yes. And speaking of Amy, I know, so Amy was actually a guest on our show last week, and
Oh,
she and Lauren Fisher run the Delray Vintage and Flea, which I know that you participate in. So I don't know if you wanted to talk to us a little bit about that and some of the other places
sure,
where we can find
sure.
you.
So the Delray Vintage and Flea, it's the first Saturday, sorry, it's the second Saturday of the month, and it's in the um, this I don't remember the name of the psych
Oh,
organization there, and
Delray. Mhm.
they're at the corner of Belafonte and Mount Vernon, and it's in the parking lot right at the corner of Delray. I'm sorry, Belafonte and
Psych
Mount
and
Vernon.
wellness. Delray
Psych and
Psych and
Wellness
Wellness.
across the street from the Salvation Army, but we're also in the Salvation Army parking lot. I was there in April and May. I'll be there again this month, so the second Saturday in June, and then November and December of this year. And I might be in there other times if there's openings that I can slot into. And that was really when I was saying that it's fun because you get to see people that we follow each other on Instagram. I know they had a pop up event there. I believe it was May 1st, and I went
Mhm.
and I saw the one potter here who's here
Oh, yeah.
local. I
Steve.
don't recall her name, but she was there. Spoke with her at some length, and then I see a lot of other groups. The people like I saw you there back in May at Delray Vintage and Flea, and that was really good because that was right before for me. It was right before Mother's Day, so I sold 6 roses, I believe it was 4 or 6, and then I sold one tulip, and I sold a couple other things, and that worked out really well. I'll be there, this coming second Saturday of June, and I'll be there primarily for Father's Day. I'll have everything there, all my flowers and that. I'll have the railroad spikes. I need to finish up a couple more this weekend. These are the edge ones. If you um, and there was a picture from before. If you go on the Instagram site or on Etsy, these are the ones I had for sale. The twisted ones. I also have some loop ones for sale. I have a handful of those, which are more of the traditional looking pop top ones. They're different. So I'll be there for that. And then at the end of the month, I will be at the Pride event at thegarden.net.
Yes. So first of all, I would like to plug your bottle openers because I do. I think my husband received one at some point, maybe Father's Day or his birthday. I'm not sure, but they're perfect, and so well done. But yeah, the garden, you guys, if you are not, we've talked about it through this entire episode, but if you aren't familiar with this space, it is this really cool makerspace down in the Eisenhower section of town, and they have the tools and the supplies. Well, not the supplies, not the steel and the metal, but they have the tools that you would need to take on more creative projects, and it's kind of like a rented kind of time and utility kind of place. And so I really would love for everybody to check them out and just kind of see what their offerings are. They also, because the space is so interesting, they use that space for events in general. Like I've gone to a graduation party there, and so it's just this really amazingly unique little.
Why
Sorry.
are you here?
This really amazing little corner of town. And funny enough, the child that just popped into frame went to preschool with the garden's son, the owner's son. And so, again, just small town, small town. But to talk about, we are having an event there in collaboration with the garden, Alexandria Makers Market, and Safe Space Nova. It will be a family-friendly Pride event, and we're just going to celebrate all the good things that go along with the month of June and Pride, we are going to have live music and yard games and kid activities, food trucks. The garden will have beverages, adult and otherwise, for sale. And they'll be showing off some of the really cool things that they do. And then we have, I think, 15 either LGBTQ or ally makers that are going to join us as well and be throughout the venue. So I think I'm really, really excited. It's going to be a really fun event. And the best part is you'll get to see Warren there. So you,
I'll be there.
Yeah. So you guys, I am just really excited for, first of all, things opening back up, opportunities for you to kind of interact with makers in person again. And so there are a lot of options. Delray Vintage's Flea is monthly at this point. And then we have our event at the end of the month. And that will be our first one in person in a very long time. So I'm excited.
And I think from what I understand, from this go to the last Delray Vintage and Flea, spoke with the woman who runs Art on the Avenue, and she's saying it's supposed to happen this year. And that's good. I paid, they had my money from last year. They just rolled it over to this year, and I'll be there in the same place. Theoretically, I'll be there in the same place in front of Bon Vivant, which is no longer open, but that's where my booth was 2 years ago, and that's where it should be this coming year.
That's fantastic news, actually. That's great. Yes, you guys, things are kind of we're regaining our normalcy, which is really fun. And so hopefully you'll just continue to see more and more events where you can find Warren and other makers from around this part of town. So yes, Warren, would you please just one more time, if people would like to find you or contact you about some custom ideas that they might have, what is the best place or the best way for them to reach you?
Well, there are two ways. One is, through Instagram. So it's instagram.com/Delray Metalworks. That's one word, Delray Metalworks. It's KS, not an X. Or you can go through my Etsy shop, which is etsy.com/shop/Delray Metalworks. And you send me a direct message through Instagram, or there's a feature in Etsy where you can send me a message to, request custom work. And again, I am amenable to discuss anything at this point. Do what I can, because it's a lot of fun. I think eventually I'm going to have to look at not working anymore, work, but this would be great other work to do when I'm not working. So
I love it. And I think the part that I appreciate the most is that you're just kind of like, I'm open to trying, right? And that's just such like a good attitude to have about it. So I just like the let's try it and find out approach.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how much time you have, but I know next week when you talk to Jacqueline, I think you'll talk about she does the wood CNC routing, cutting. I do that on a real small basis. It's like 11-inch by 11-inch, but I'm also through the garden. I learned how to use their Tormach 440, which is a metal CNC router machine. So I'm looking to start doing some work in aluminum. It's just a matter of finding the time to learn the software, but I am qualified to run that as well.
That's very cool. Well, I can't wait to see what happens after you learn that machine, because like I said, I've been watching your progression over the last year or so, and just it's been really fun to watch. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really fun. You guys, please make sure you go make plans to check out Warren's work at Delray Vintage and Flea, at our upcoming Pride event online and Instagram. And then as you're going about your week, come back to ZTV. Join us next week. This is the last show for this week, but Monday and the rest of the week we'll have a great lineup. We have Steve Hauk, Living on Music, and so you can go to the Zebras Facebook page and check out all the details there. But I just appreciate you being with us here tonight. And as you go on, please shop small, shop local, and make it Alexandria and go be the good news in someone's life.